Hey everybody, welcome back to Peace Over Performance. And I am coming to you in this session officially on the first day of spring. So, first of all, it's good news that I'm back. As I said in the last session, I had an existential question about the channel. But here I am again. I think us talking about tea, time, energy, and attention was just a really valuable conversation that I know some people are having with themselves now as a result of some feedback from that last session. And we're going to continue on talking about establishing agency with the peace self, always worthy, loved, learning peace self. Establishing agency with that peace self so it can better lead, guide, and drive from peace performance, the performance self, responsible, determined, and achieving. Okay. So I have been rereading and diving back into habits, atomic habits. Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results, James Clear. Now, this is a classic book. It's been out for a while. And I say classic, it's definitely in my Amy classic list. And what an Amy book reading classic list is, are any books I've read that I end up keeping, because, I get rid of a lot of books, but keeping the book, rereading parts of it, and referring back to it on a semi-periodic basis. And James Clear's book makes it into that category. And so I was inspired by this because we're going to talk about three things on this peace self agency as we continue forward thinking about mind, body, spirit on the agency of peace self. First thing we're going to talk about today a little bit is habits and what the peace self relationship is with habits versus the performance self, referring to some of Mr. Clear's information in here. And we're going to talk about honoring our limitations, something that, this world doesn't seem to be very good at doing. Especially we're not very good at doing when we're in the world and trying to be among the world, is honoring limitations and what that can mean, what that looks like. And the third thing is renewal. Renewal, knowing renewal. So, okay, let's roll a little bit. So what got me into habits as well as the book was I, at my age that I am now with my gray hair, am learning about my ever-changing body. And I have come to understand that I have hypermobility. And it's been an issue I've had probably my whole life, but not really known and understood it. And why is now I'm aging, everything I do has to be intentional physically. And I have to take care of my body differently. Uh, I should have maybe been doing this for a long time. But anyway, that got me also into the habits thing. And here's the interesting reflection when we're talking about habits. The performance self, when it comes to habits, tends to think of habits as you've got to get the outcome. You got to full bore, do whatever it takes to get the outcome. So this is where you see people going, the thing that I have done many times in my life, we see other people doing it. They're so exuberant and excited and all in and have this honeymoon period when they start something new that they're going to do to transform and change themselves or change some situation with a habit, be it a diet, be all these things. And they go full bore and they get excited and they bring accountability. They do all this stuff. They say, let's do this. Hey, we're going to do it. And then it loses its steam, like, New Year's resolutions. It loses its entire steam. And I thought James did a good job of explaining this here. I really think it was a very good way of talking about this. Because we think in the performance self, big immediately. Going big immediately is always the best thing to do, right? That's what we think. Going big immediately is the best thing to do to get to the outcome. But here's what he says. In his book, his section on why small habits make a big difference, right? Is it is so, he says it's so easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. Too often we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. Doesn't that sound like the performance self? Massive success requires massive action. Like we're not gonna just change one habit, we're gonna change 16. We're gonna do all these things. Now, this isn't bad stuff to want to get momentum going. I'm not arguing with that, but here, listen to this. Whether it's losing weight, building a business, writing a book, winning a championship, or achieving any other goal, we put pressure on ourselves to make some earth-shattering improvement that everyone will talk about. So this is really an interesting way he writes this. We put pressure on ourselves to make some earth-shattering improvement that everyone will talk about. See, isn't that interesting? So that just reeks of the performance self, right? Like the performance self is like, okay, I'm going to put all this pressure on me. I'm going to just, I'm going to, kind of, psych myself up and get this stuff and go out and change out this and do all these things and I'm going to do it. And then the, earth shattering improvement, it has to, I have to see really significant momentum that everyone will talk about because there's a part of the performance self that wants so badly the validation from this world on the habits. Now, we all do this. I mean, honestly, we have all done stuff like this. Like we're, you know, here's my here's my confession, right? Everybody's always like, Amy, you should write a book. That's the big book thing. Oh my God. And I have made 3 attempts in my life to write a book. And here's crazy. I love to write. But my performance self was destroying me trying to write a book because I would put this ridiculous pressure. I remember one time I like redid a room, made it a huge writing room, and and at the time in the season of life I was in a rough personal season. I mean, we had a lot of hard stuff going on in family. I had very demanding work situations going on, and what the heck business? I didn't understand how to write a book at the time because I really didn't have the right seasonal environment for it, and I just wasn't in the right headspace. But what I did was my performance self took over, and it's like I'm gonna do this. And I talked to people. I made a mistake if telling people I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna write a book. I've done this many times, and they're like, "How's the book?" And then you're like, "Oh no, now you've come out to the world with your performance self, with your new habits, your outcomes, and it's like you feel like an imposter. Like, I should never have even I'm a failure. I can't do it. So you can see the cycle. Like the performance self gets you all ramped up, and then you announce to yourself in these big high expectation ways. So this is going to get me to what the peace self thinks about habits. That peace self, that we'll get there. But first, so James Clear is saying in his book is that tiny changes, tiny little changes, 1% a day, small little things you do every day is what really creates change. Um, Small, incremental, tiny, small things. It's being realistic. And the peace self comes at habits very differently than the performance self. The peace self, I have realized, comes at habits by way of seeing habits as medicine. Habits are medicine to your life. It's not just the outcome to prove to the world, it's the journey that's going on inside of you. It's your medicine. And so I'm dealing with a different kind of, call it whatever it is, aging, hypermobility, all these different things. And I am having to look at my habits as um, the most beautiful thing I do to have a meaningful life. And it takes when you start to reframe habits as medicine, habits as this beautiful ritual, habits as a powerful journey. Yeah, the peace self looks and experiences habits so much differently than the performance self. Where the performance self is out to prove something, the peace self is out to create a path to our future self in the most compassionate way possible. Okay, bear with me, right? I may have mentioned this before. The end of history illusion is a study. The end of history illusion is a study, and it is a one of the largest sociological longitudinal studies, and if I said that word right, um, done between people ages 18 to 70 years old, and they did it over years, this study, and with thousands of people, and follow them through their life's journey, and found out that essentially, what is the end of history illusion? It's this illusion that we underestimate how much our future self, how different our future self will be. We underestimate how different our future self will be. We think we're going to be the same person we are now for the rest of our life, whatever time we have left on earth. And the end of history illusion is thinking that and not realizing how much we actually can and will change. And I could say, if you, I'm sure I've talked about this before, maybe, but if whatever age you are today and you look back 10 years ago to that you, what would you say to that you 10 years ago? And about habits. So the peace self recognizes that reality, and it doesn't fall into the end of history illusion like the performance self does, which is, I can just do this right now. I have to do it right now because I want to be this person right now for the rest of my. Whereas the peace self understands compassionately that habits are a path. And I love walking on wooded paths. Like I'm like the most, give me an easy hike through a beautiful forest kind of person, right? And I love that, right? So if you just like think about taking a walk through a beautiful pathway in a forest or somewhere, and it's just a beautiful walk. You are not interested necessarily in I have to race to get to the destination. You are there because you love what you're seeing and experiencing on the path. The path itself is the most beautiful thing that's happening. And that's how the peace self sees habits. It's creating a path. That's why it makes so much sense with James Clear's whole thesis of his book is these small changes every single day. I Habits are beautiful things we make along the way of this path of life. Habits are actually medicine. So this reframing, I'm talking to myself and I'm coaching me right now because I'm thinking about we're in a different life season and we need different habits to honor that season. Because your peace self wants to honor the season you're in and walk you towards the next season you're going to. And it's no rush. It's a deliberate, beautiful, intentional, present walk. And so all these little things I'm doing a ton of things, small, small things. And James Clear also talks about habit stacking. So you build one habit and then you begin to build others. So, listen, I've talked about this. I was so happy. Been happy about it. I've kind of lost 20 some pounds. I'd still like to continue to lose more, but I'm not letting my performance self take over. I'm managing the peace self. And what James Clear talks about is this thing called habit stacking, where you build one habit and then after you've established that one, build another little habit on top of it. And it keeps going. And I've been habit stacking around how I eat and what I do to move this body and the way I exercise, all these little habit stacks. But what it's doing is it's creating this delicate path to my future self, whatever that will be. And you think about it, we are the sum of our habits when we reach our future self. I mean, if we've had very destructive, unhealthy, unintentional, unconscious, unhealthy habits, our bodies will eventually reflect what that looks like in the years to come. One of the things I think about is I wish I would have taken better care of myself when I was younger. All those little things we can do. But regardless of letting go of the past, here I am on the path of thinking about habits from a peace self agency standpoint. Now, I want to also talk about something that has to go alongside this, which is limitations. We do not like to think about this, limitations. But the peace self can help you honor your limitations. Now, there is a difference between the thing that's the tagline of the performance self world, which is get out of your comfort zone. Getting out of your comfort zone is a different thing than understanding your limitations. Like there are genuine limitations that we all have at all times. The strange thing of the performance self mindset without peace and in a high octane performance environment, whether it be at work in your life or whatever, uh, is there is there's a chronic problem with not recognizing limitations. And limitations are viewed for some people as like I just remember uh, some of my clients that I've worked with over the years struggling to recognize that they do have actual limits and that without understanding and seeing what they are, they're going to get themselves into a bit of trouble, right? They're going to get into situations that there's no way they could prepare for. There's no way they could be oriented towards that situation effectively because they're way past their limit in terms of exhaustion or in terms of just, not having the time to prep. This classic situation you see that people get promoted too fast into positions. They get like zoomed up the ladder and everybody goes, oh my gosh, this person's like a train wreck now. Well, it's because, there was limitations and limitations. So they're very important to recognize. I used to coach in a program where they would send people off into orienteering experiences, which means really throwing people vastly out of their comfort zone, getting on ropes courses and doing all that kinds of stuff. And I had a client that was on the course and yeah, basically in most of the challenges, the zip lining and all the physical stuff, she was great. She had no problem doing any of it. But there was this one exercise they got into where you had to be blindfolded and walk through something and have the people around you guide you, right? In other words, you total dependence on people around you and not being able to see. And she had a full-on panic attack to before that. When they instructed the exercise, she's like, I cannot do this. And she lost it. And all of a sudden she meant a limitation. And she was so, I think the emotions were also a lot of embarrassment, like what's wrong with her that she can't do this. But what's beautiful about meeting and understanding limitations is they help us understand ourselves better. They help us respect the lane we need to be in right now. They teach us things. So, I, in my current age and season, my body is like, here's limitations. It doesn't mean that you give up on the path. It means you do something different. It means you do something different. But we live in a world where, we're always on. We have everything going on all the time. People pulling on us day and night on the phones, and the phones pulling us into things we don't need to be even looking at truly. And we lose sight of limitations. Addictions are the substance or the object blinding us to limitations, and we start running down a path that's not a good one. It's a cliff. So I want you to think about this. Like, we don't think about this intentionally, do we? Like, what are my actual limitations? I think there's a fear of facing them for some people. Uh, you know, Now, talking to yourself about what they really are in your life, what limitations do you really have, uh, helps you understand that when you do want to step out of your comfort zone and do something that stretches yourself, that stretches you, you can do it with intention, right? I can do it with intention. But you're the only person that truly can get down to the real, true limitations that you have right now. But you also have to really do the examination, not letting someone define it for you, but really understand what they are so that you can honor yourself. Limitations provide a lane. They really do provide a very powerful lane that you're meant to be walking in and creating the right moments with. Okay, so this brings us to our last point of discussion in our session today, and that is all about renewal. Your peace self, always loved, worthy, loved, and learning peace self, is your pioneer into a lifestyle of renewal. A lifestyle of renewal. That's what your peace self can do for you if we allow it. And the performance self has a role to play in renewal as well, that's for sure. But the peace self is the one in the lead, okay? And the world won't give you the time, space, or even acknowledgement of what work is involved in renewal. But I believe, and I'll speak from my faith, that we were all designed as renewal machines in a beautiful way, like renewal creatures. I mean, so I collected some interesting facts about the body, the physical body, and renewal. Here's some interesting things. Your body replaces, we replace our cells every day. How many cells do we replace in our body every day? Roughly 300 and 330 billion cells in your body, which only apparently represents a total of 1%. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, it's amazing. It's part of an ongoing renewal process. It's what it's you know organs that generate that heal scars and everything that happens, tissue being grown and repairs being made. Um, we shed about, I'm reading right now, about 1 million skin cells. This is kind of, I know it's kind of maybe a little, but yeah, I mean, the skin is resurfaces essentially, right? We resurface every 2 to 4 weeks. The lining of the intestines um, is fully replaced apparently every 3 to 7 days. This is incredible to think about. Uh, red blood cells have apparently a lifespan of 120 days, and then they're recycled and replaced, ensuring that your blood stays fresh and efficient carrying oxygen. Isn't this crazy? So our body is this beautiful design of renewal. And we are supposed to be literally in a lifestyle of renewal. This is why the peace self can treat the habits as part of a path and learn and respect limitations and use limitations, in a compassionate way. Uh, Renewal to all of this to refuel what we're doing in a renewing way. And I try to remember this. I have to be, again, really, give myself my own medicine here. But when I'm having rough days, I'm not feeling good, or I'm struggling with things, or whatever, my back pain and all the things that goes on. I try to remember that, what, tomorrow could be a very different day. And I'm one of these people that I am a very heavy journaling person. I do a very geek thing with journaling. I keep uh, snapshots of multiple years on one page for journals. I love doing that because you can look back at 5 years ago. What was the thing that was occupying you on that day, right? Compared to now. And you could really timeline, growth, and you could timeline what's, you carry with you when you journal that way. And but one of the interesting takeaways from all that is there's renewal. Like we can be in places that we don't think we can be from a healing standpoint, from um, a life standpoint, because we never imagined, our end of history illusion tricked us, thinking that there wouldn't be as much renewal in our path as there has been. Like, I want you to think about this. Think back to a really crazy hard time in your life when it was a really hard season and you weren't even feeling good in your body. I mean, you just weren't in a good place in all ways. And maybe where you are today, that's better, way better. And you never would have, like, if you somebody would have shown you a picture of this, you wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have known it was possible. That's because renewal is in our design. And I believe God wants us to respect that, right? And so, everything that you do that creates a renewal energy for yourself to walk forward in renewal, the performance self without peace and a world demanding everything of us with no limitations, not caring what the heck our habits are and not, giving us space to maybe learn, would be getting us into a place easily if we allowed it into total depletion, a trend of depletion versus renewal, just to like give, underinvest in what we need to do to renew ourselves and renew our life by just, laying it all out for everything else that's being demanded. So again, consciously, like, we need to acknowledge habits and limits. We need to say, what am I doing right now in this day that's about renewal? What am I doing in my life season right now that's about renewal? How do I honor this powerful renewal uh, design in my physical body? In my physical body. Now, the other thing is our thought life has to also be renewable. Like, and so, okay, this is where we get into some cool things. Let me go over to some scripture here. Some really cool things because uh, well, we know this, metacognition, we can examine, we have the design to examine our own thoughts, call out our own thought life, step back from our own thoughts and reframe. We have all that power. It's incredible amount of choice on that. And, where our thoughts take us is, like I said, where you take yourself is where you live. Our thoughts take us is where we end up living. And even early is, you know, I don't know when the book of Romans was written scripturally, but I mean, we know this as humans. Here's what it says. It says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And this is from Romans 12 too. And what's so wise and amazing and, you know, absolutely a deep truth in our knitting is that it's calling out the patterns of this world really are things that put us into unhealthy places. They can, right? It really can put us into unhealthy places. And because I believe no one knows you as well as your eternal designer. Like, no one knows you as well as who's designed you, not just to be able to live a purposeful life on earth, but to get a footprint here that transcends into eternity, into a heaven. It is so powerful. And I think renewal is, especially in relationship to a living faith, is like this cord from here to heaven. And we honor it when we renew. And that's just my experience personally when I have prayer time, I write prayers, or I pray, or I work in scripture, I feel this renewal of my mind. I feel it, I sense it, I experience it, I believe it, and it takes me away from the patterns of the world that would be like, just give me your performance self, and when it's empty, we're getting somebody else. That's the performance self world without peace. Okay. In the midst of literally anything inwardly, there's always the capacity of some kind of renewal taking place. Always. And oh man, this is a crazy, amazing story. But um, I was with my mom in the last week of her life and a week before that, and she had like a scrape on her arm or something, when she was literally in her last 30 days on Earth. So her body was actively dying. It was working into the dying process. And that little scrape on her arm, though, the craziest thing is it healed. So what was amazing to me is it healed, even though her body was dying. There was, it healed. It did its job. Like, I just thought there's something so touching and compassionate, and like I felt God's tenderness on that. It was just really, I never forgot that. Like, wow, that's just what an incredible gift and a thing that God does with us. It's so beautiful. So that healing is like from the highest places ever because of how loved we all are, deeply loved. Anyway, just gonna leave you on that amazing note. Okay, habits, honor your limitations, and engage in a renewal lifestyle for this peace, self-agency. That's where we're at right now, and we will get back together. I'm kind of excited, I got a little renewal on the YouTube channel. So we're here together. Okay, guys, I adore you very much. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the session, and I'll see you next time. Bye.